I was out in the Southwest not too long ago, within the last month.
Yeah, you went to Vegas, right?
Vegas and like Page, Arizona, Utah, all over there. And conversations were a lot about water scarcity. And so what's kind of your perspective on water scarcity and real briefly, like potential solutions for kind of this problem that certainly the Southwest is facing?
Definitely. What actually opened my mind to that is a book I read a few years ago called The Life and Death of the Great Lakes.
Okay.
By Dan something. I can't remember the it might be the Death and Life of Great Lakes, whatever.
Okay.
But basically talks about how in the future the Great Lakes of North America are going to be a huge source of fresh water in the coming future. And how even in Wisconsin, I know you're from Wisconsin, I believe there is a town that sits just to the west of the natural watershed.
Okay.
So this town, their water would naturally flow west toward the Mississippi rather than east toward Lake Michigan. And they found a way to just sort of get over that and try to get water from Lake Michigan, which caused a big controversy. And there's a lot of people are trying to divert a lot of the fresh water here to places like Georgia, which is a huge project. And of course, so back to the Southwest and California, like it's a little scary.
No, it seriously was scary when I was out there. So
Yeah.
I'm looking at snowbird locations. I'm scouting, observing, and I've been to Miami twice.
You're like my age. You're like 32, 33.
Yeah, I'm going to make it happen very quickly.
Sure.
And so I'm already spending times in these locations, and I'm like, do I want more southeast? Do I want southwest? What I concluded was I dig Miami, especially because of the culture, the energy, the like the vibes.
Mm-hmm.
Southwest, it was so chill. Everything's so spread out, and you can see canyons miles away. You can see weather storms miles and miles away. But the water scarcity thing really freaked me out.
Yeah. And I think the water scarcity problem is going to be a problem even in a place like Miami, where, there's water, but you can't drink it. And there's a lot of people are trying to set up infrastructure to purify the water, and things are just getting more polluted. So even though you could be surrounded by water, but it might not necessarily be potable.
But this is what I don't understand. How do we not have this technology yet? Or like, how do we not have the technology or resources effective, the level of effectiveness to turn salt water into fresh water? How have we not gotten there yet in society?
I know
civilization.
I know there are certain groups that are trying to, and certain companies that are trying to develop that technology, and I believe to an extent they're
Is it like
getting
politics and energy get in the way?
Yeah, like everything else, politics, like.
But this seems like a good thing that we should probably look into.
Look, there's a lot of good things that are good for humanity, but when have politicians had our best interests at heart?
Well, now I'm like putting my foot down. I'm very protective of this water here. We got Great Lakes, folks. We got to.
During the upcoming apocalypse, the Great Lakes are a great place to be. I am not moving from here.
Yeah,
people
are afraid of the cold, so they go to the Southwest, Southeast.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, we're just waiting. We're just waiting for everybody to come back because we got the water.
Yeah, and the global South is going to be affected the most with climate change, like the
southern hemisphere.
More toward like the equator areas. Okay. So like the areas around the equator are just going to be basically unlivable. Like
just
temperatures are going to be so hot, and it's not just the temperature. It's the humidity. I forget what the actual number is, but above a certain percentage humidity, you can't sweat anymore. Sweat is actually how our body cools ourselves, because like when we have our sweat come out of our pores, it's the evaporation of the water from our skin. That evaporation is taking away the heat from our bodies. And there comes a point where if it's too humid out, the evaporation of the water from our skin just won't happen. So we can't actually sweat away the heat energy from our bodies. So people will actually overheat without AC. And
there'll be this like astronomical reliance on AC, which requires energy to run.
Right. And a lot of climate refugees. One could argue, there's another book that I recently read. By the way, I know you like to read, I like to read. And if you want to come by, look at my library. There's a book called...
I would love that.
This book called Rising by Elizabeth Rush.
Okay.
She actually talks to a lot of people in the U.S., people in Maine, Rhode Island, Staten Island, Louisiana, and San Francisco, just about rising sea levels. And she argues that like one of the first climate quote-unquote refugees are people in Staten Island who got hit by Hurricane Sandy. Like they had their beach houses and they decided that they're going to take the government funding to move away from the ocean and just let it go back to being wetlands.
I do see that. I haven't talked about it really publicly, but this is something I kind of believe a lot. And that's the 21st century is going to be about human movement.
Yeah.
And like the populations, I closely watch like the populations of countries and areas and continents and look at like that data and like trends. And it'll be really interesting the moves that countries make to like take in people, absorb people, and then put people in positions where they can still live and be happy and productive, live lives.
Yeah.
And so like human population movements. I think the 21st century is going to be really it's going to be a big issue.
One of the most hard-hitting points that this author made is that people are so slow, if not inert, to act on climate change is because it just takes so much time for you to see, a rise in temperature, 1 degree Celsius per, like for however long it takes. So because it's not an immediate threat, people just, look the other way.
Because people also, too, on a daily basis have struggles and needs and...
Like I gotta go to
very
work.
Tough.
I gotta, pay my taxes. I gotta pay my rent. Like no one's. If it's something that's gonna happen in 20 years, like no one's gonna. People are not acting on it, which is a fault of our species.